Hey there. If you have a true scary story that you'd like to hear featured on the channel, then go to mariesfield.com and send it my way. And of course, thank you. So, I'm not a techie like some of the people here, but I at least do know what I need to do when it comes to accessing the deep web. That said, I don't go digging for creepy stuff, and I don't ever go for anything legal. On the deep web, there is a lot of content that is just slightly too raunchy for the surface web and isn't posted for the masses. A good number of deep websites don't even crack into the illegal category. That's the main difference between the dark web and the deep web. A lot of what I know on the deep web is people talking BS about random things: politics, modern science, technology, cryptids, and other supernatural stuff, as well as conspiracy theories. Some of those conspiracy theories can really get freaking weird. In fact, that's kind of what my story here is about. So, one of the sites I would use a lot was a discussion board for conspiracy theories and craziness about how there were demons among us that were going to take over the world. A lot of it sounded like insane people rambling off scripts that you would find in the trash bin at the Sci-Fi Channel headquarters. But some of it was interesting, and all the theories had their ardent followers. The people that seemed to run most of the theories were those that genuinely believed that our governments around the world were run by demons that sacrificed children to drink their blood. Like, seriously crazy stuff. I remember that there was one user that was seriously crazy into this theory. I think his name was something like Dave is home or something. I remember it being something about Dave and home, so I'm just going to call him Dave. Dave would post on every single thread that he could find, and he would egg on the initial poster to the point that he was almost rewriting their theories. What's worse, he seemed to believe in every single crazy theory that was posted. Government run by baby-eating demons? Yep, totally true. Same government somehow being run by spacefaring lizard people. Also just as true. Disney sneaking subtle hints into their kid movies to get everyone hooked on cocaine? Sure, why the hell not? It was as if this guy refused to see reality for what was in front of his eyes. Everything had a hidden agenda. Everything was some plot to control the masses, and everything was worth questioning. I don't think Dave could have made a cup of coffee without accusing the coffee maker of trying to take away his God-given freedoms. Anyways, as quickly as I saw Dave make new posts on the forum, I noticed that he had almost entirely disappeared. I went over to his profile to see what he had posted lately, only to find that he had made a final thread called "Don't Trust the Admin." This thread outlined that the admins of the forum site were attempting to find him so that they could send a hitman to take him out of the picture. It had a ton of seemingly irrelevant details and included pictures of random people that Dave claimed were following him for the admins. He then rounded the whole thing out with an onion link to a website that he had created that he could continue on with his ramblings. I went over to his website and read all of his posts, and they legitimately just kept getting crazier and crazier. Eventually, I'd had enough of his absolute craziness and decided to log off for a while. I kind of stopped getting on the deep web for a little bit, mostly because I really didn't have time and was feeling the stress of my first year in college. After a while, I think it was a couple of months between my last check, I decided I wanted to get on and see what all Dave had gotten up to. I went back to the forum, went to his account, and then to his personal site/blog, only to find that there were over 300 new updates. This man had seriously posted over 300 times within maybe a month and a half, at most. I started going down the rabbit hole of his posts, and his theories started getting really abstract. Some of them made some sense, like he would have clear moments in the crazy fog, but a lot of them were things like the Russian government is watching you with a satellite that comes around every week, and how meat that you buy at the store isn't really meat, but a plasticine-like material that was synthesized, and that it contained hormones to make people dumb. It was all honest-to-God insanity. Then I got to the end of the feed, and I felt bad for laughing at his posts. His last post was simply titled, "I can't do it anymore." It was probably the most lucid thing he had written on the page. It explained that his mother had passed away from cancer. Of course, he blamed Big Pharma for this, but then went on to explain that the stress of his life was too much for him and he couldn't keep up. He outlined some of his theories about the government running our lives and explained that if he couldn't live free, then he wouldn't live at all. He finished off the post saying, "To all my friends that have helped me to see clearly over the years, I thank you, and may God bless you all." Then he posted a picture of a hand holding a pistol of some sort. I don't know jack about guns. There was nothing after this post, and the few comments that existed were just people saying that God would understand his decision and that he was truly a soldier fighting for the truth. Obviously, this was pretty depressing, and I was a bit freaked out, knowing that this guy I was making fun of in my head was most likely not alive, and was also most likely dealing with mental health issues. In the end, I didn't really go back or spend any time on the deep web. Dave's story had a bit of a lasting effect on me and taught me a lesson about sympathy.
I like to dabble in the dark web every once in a while, mostly for entertainment purposes, but I also like to, well, I'll put it straight, I like to purchase things that are not legal. There are certain things that I purchase that the police would not be proud of. Nothing that's disgusting or anything like that, but I have personal issues that certain substances have helped me with in the past. I'm not proud, and I should stop, but I'm not here to discuss my personal habits or be part of an intervention. I'm writing this to tell you about what terrible things I have found on the dark web personally. So, who am I? Well, I'm in my late 20s, and I'm what one would consider a professional hacker in my career. For the most part, I'm a white hat. I do what I do professionally and within the confines of the law. I used to work for a pretty large corporation as part of their security team, but I've since gone on to be a contractor, and now I just hack away at sites and apps that companies want tested. The technical term is penetration tester, but the layman term is just good guy hacker. That's not to say that I haven't done my fair share of illegal hacking, accessing systems I'm not supposed to be getting into, databases that should be protected, shutting down certain people I didn't care for, etc. I've never stolen data and sold it for anything. I've gotten into some fairly sensitive servers in the past. Now, the dark web is a lot harder to hack, so to speak. You need to know how to get to the server. You need to be able to remotely access said server, and so forth and so on. Because these servers aren't indexed, it's pretty damn hard, and the main way to get into them is to find a vulnerability in an onion site. Again, not an easy task. I mean, come on, these people are on the dark web. They know that what they're doing is probably illegal. They aren't going to operate with the flimsy system. Most of the time. Walking back to my statement about how I have, and sometimes still do, purchase illegal things on the dark web, there are quite a few marketplaces that exist out there. You all know about the big ones that have been shut down, like Silk Road, but that was just the tip of the iceberg, and they got shut down because they got cocky. I've never worked with any of the big name markets. I like to keep it with the little guys, mostly because they're less likely to be compromised. One of the marketplaces that I use ended up going offline, based on their own statements because they assumed that they had a snake that was sneaking around. Or basically law enforcement was trying to get into their systems or was compromising their network. Hacking them, again, in layman terms. Well, that snake was me. Except I wasn't doing what I was doing to give information to the cops or anything. I just ended up finding a hole in their security and exploiting it. I was able to get into their local network. I was able to get into their customer database. And I was actually able to get into their mail server. You may be listening to this and thinking, okay, so what? Why is this guy bragging about getting into their network and saying it's a scary story? I'm getting there. Slowly. The first point to make is that I said customer databases, which, if you think about it, is a problem. These guys were on the dark web and were selling illegal substances for cryptocurrency. Why did they have customer data? Why did they have names, addresses, and delivery instructions saved on a network for their dark web service? Well, my good friend, what you may not think about is the fact that these people dealing in illegal sales want leverage over you, and those like you. And while they say that they don't have your information, a lot of them do. They save that data, and they will use it to lessen their sentence if they are caught. Or they will legitimately just sell you out if they think you're a problem. I'm only adding this in to be a deterrent to those of you that think you'll be okay if you go out and buy some drugs on the dark web. They save your data, they know who you are, and they will use it if they think it will benefit them. Now, the real scary part of what I found was in their mail server. These messages were routed pretty much internally. There was no external traffic. These were set up so that only the two people in the communication could ever touch or see the message, unless you actually got into their internal server and subsequently into one of the accounts. The first few messages weren't that interesting. They were just about business dealings. They mentioned that there were other people they wanted to get off the service. They were even talking about compromising another marketplace. It wasn't until I got into one of their conversations marked synthetic testing that stuff got freaky. The first message explained that they had a new product that was being lab synthesized, but they didn't know if it was any good or if there was anything negative about it. The response basically said, screw it, sell it anyways. The first sender stated that they didn't want to sell it to the normal clientele, as it may harm their reputation and thus their sales, if it wasn't a good product. They then asked the second person to find a test subject, and followed that up with, find someone young and healthy, preferably someone in their teens. I think that way we can get the best results, less likely to be tracked. Do you still have your connections? He said that he did, and that he could have 2 or 3, in his words, children, lined up and ready to go within a week. These guys were seriously going to be testing drugs, lab-synthesized drugs on children or teens to see if they were any good. The more I dug into it, the worse it got. There were conversations for this, there were conversations about weapon transfers, and there was even an entire chain that claimed they had a potential in with a company that developed medications, and that they may be supplying their subjects to test new, still being researched, medication for a company in another country. Basically, underground testing for non-FDA approved drugs. Unfortunately, I didn't have any way to pull this information from the server, and I didn't have the ability to save it locally. so there wasn't a whole lot I could do without incriminating myself. I ended up documenting information by hand as best I could, and went to submit an anonymous, which is a laughable term, tip. By the time I went to do so, they had gone offline. Apparently, while I had gotten in, and I was properly secured, my access was logged. So they knew that someone had seen the information. My guess is that this set off alarms, and they moved to another network, location, onion link, etc. I wish I could say that I learned a thing or two from this, but I am a stubborn idiot. And I still do business on the dark web. The only thing I learned was that I don't personally want to know what the hell goes on out there. And not any more than what I personally need.
In the time that I have personally spent on the deep web and dark web, which I can say with all honesty has probably been way too long, I've seen some incredibly bizarre and really messed up stuff. A lot of what I've seen and done could probably get me into legal trouble if I went into detail. Thankfully, I know what I'm doing for the most part and have protected myself. This isn't my first story on your channel, but I'm not going to say which one was mine. I'll leave that for the listeners to figure out. I will say in the story that the actions were definitely not legal. That said, I thought I would send you another story and send you one that wasn't me doing anything, but me finding something on the deep web that was genuinely unexpected and legitimately creepy as hell. I can't remember the exact point in time that this happened, but it was a while back, pre-COVID, which honestly feels like an eternity ago, so probably early 2019. I was on one of my typical dark web excursions, trying to decide what I wanted to do while perusing through various onion links, and I ended up on a page that was incredibly out of place. On the dark web, you get tons of strange stuff, adult content and what have you, but this page looked like someone's personal homepage. This page had a guy's picture on the page, front and center, and it went into a lot of detail explaining who exactly this guy was. It has his name, location, professional experiences, software and apps that he helped develop, companies he had contracted with and worked for, etc. To be honest, this page could almost have been a substitute for the guy's LinkedIn, if it weren't an onion link on the deep web. I started reading his info out of curiosity. Honestly, I hadn't seen any other page where a person laid out their life for the deep web, but this guy was putting it all out there. Experience, education, who he's worked with, what languages he knew, all of it. I seriously went through all of his pages, one by one, pretty much becoming this guy's biggest fan, until I got to the bottom. There was a page titled, "To the Love of My Life, Chrissy." I was already this deep into this guy's information, so I figured why not learn about the person that he obviously was in love with. Couldn't hurt, right? But before I press on to what was on that page, I'm going to remind you that this page was laid out like a CV. This guy was very professional and was obviously proud of his accomplishment. It had a ton of his personal information, and it seriously looked like something he could have sent to a prospective employer, but this page undid all of that. At the top of the page was a brief explanation of who exactly Chrissy was. Apparently, Chrissy was a former co-worker to this guy. They had worked together at a previous contract gig, and he was very, obviously, painfully obsessed with her. This page had a header/title that seriously read, "Chrissy is my angel, my light, and God wants me to have her," which was followed by an incredibly cringy poem about how she was his world and how his life was only worth living while he was with her. Then there was a picture of a woman who I'm going to go out on a limb and assume it was Chrissy. Now, all of that was within the first section of the page and isn't too terrible, right? It's creepy, but it wasn't necessarily terrifying. Well, after that is where things started to get freaking weird. After his quick confession of how much he loved Chrissy, this guy threw out any semblance of sanity and his mental state became very apparent. He had picture after picture after picture of this woman. Again, creepy, he was obviously collecting pictures of her, but it just kept escalating. Several of these pictures, in fact most of them, were pretty obviously taken without Chrissy's consent. Some looked like they were taken at company events or with friends. Some looked like they were taken from a Facebook page. But a lot of them were taken of her at candid moments. There were pictures of her at her desk, at an office, in the parking lot, eating lunch with friends, at a park with, I'm assuming, her husband and kids, the grocery store. There were even some pictures taken over her through a window and through curtains of her in pajamas, and some of her in her underwear and home. This guy was clearly a stalker, which, yeah, was obvious, but he had taken it to almost the furthest level he could. By this point, we've clearly established that he was an obsessed stalker creep, but there was more. He had actually photoshopped Chrissy's face onto adult models, and then photoshopped his own face onto males in the same pictures. Each picture had its own description of what it was supposed to be, like me and Chrissy on our honeymoon, a hot summer night, expressing our love, etc. And all of them obviously photoshopped pictures of adult content with their faces. This man was obsessed, yes, which is creepy in its own right, but this was a level above obsession. This was him living out a creepy fantasy with a woman that had a life of her own, and she had no idea how deep in love with her this weirdo was. I honestly felt bad for her, and if I knew how to get a hold of her, I would have let her know so she could file a restraining order. I remember after all the freaky pics, there was a section at the end that said something like, "Chrissy and I are soulmates. We met in heaven before we came to earth, and God wants us to be together. We will be the modern Adam and Eve, lovers meant to usher in the future. She will see how much I love her, and we will embrace as we welcome our new lives." Which, to me, sounded a bit like him saying he was going to force her to love him. But I don't know. In the end, this was one of the weirdest things I've seen on the dark web. It may not be super creepy to some people, but it just makes me wonder how many weirdos obsess with their women coworkers like this and don't build their own dark web shrine.
This story takes place when I was in college a couple of years ago. I was away from home for most of the year on campus, and I didn't have much going on in my social life. I didn't really socialize, and I wasn't doing much in ways of partying or hanging out with anyone else. Through most of my college life, I only had one real friend, Charles. Charles was a techie. He was all about the newest trend in technology, and he was always willing to discuss the newest topic if you had an interest. Since I really only had Charles, and I couldn't see my family or friends at home, I would sometimes get to a point where I was really lonely, and feeling like there was no one around to talk to. Yes, cell phones are a thing and were, and I could have just called my family at any time, but honestly, there's something about seeing the faces of those you love that makes it more personal, and makes it feel more connected. Maybe it's just me, but sometimes I feel like I need to see someone's face to know they're really there. Anyway, there was one day where I mentioned this to my dad, that I was feeling a bit down about having not seen them for a couple of months. And he decided to take it upon himself to send me a fancy webcam so that we could start doing video chatting. I was honestly ecstatic at the idea, and I actually joked about how that was something I should have thought of. He ends up going to a local tech store and buys a really nice full HD Logitech webcam. I have no idea how much he ended up spending on it, but it was a really good quality camera. As soon as I got it, I set it up and got it all running. Then, I got on a video call with my mom and dad. I was legitimately excited to have it, and I really felt like this thing was going to be the solution to my socialization issues, for sure. For a month or two, everything went pretty normal with it, and the camera itself. Or at least how it worked, and that isn't the focus of this story. The camera itself was a really good piece of hardware. The image was crystal clear and it was really easy to use. Unfortunately, being a good piece of hardware meant that Charles liked it as well. Long story short with that, Charles was wanting to start a YouTube channel where he went down internet rabbit holes and solved those weird mysteries on the web. Think people like Frederick Knudsen or Nightmind and such, but dedicated to those weird 4chan mysteries. Basically, he just asked me if he could use my computer to record myself for his videos, and in return, he would be my on-call tech support. I didn't really care about the tech support, and while it was a little weird to have him in my dorm room, I didn't mind it. For the most part, he would text me when he wanted to record, and I would go for a walk to go get food, or just work on homework in the common areas of the university. The deal went for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 at most, and he recorded at least 5 or 6 times during this time frame. I watched his first few videos, and they were actually pretty decent. Good, interesting information that was presented in a clean way. He had one on some missing girl that some people on 4chan were talking about that was pretty well done, and then he had one that explained parts of the deep and dark web. I found it a bit strange that he didn't even bother to ask to use my computer that next week, but I also thought that maybe he was just busy with classwork. Then, when the next Monday rolled around and he didn't have class, and he didn't call me, I messaged him and asked him what was up. He told me that he just wasn't feeling up to doing anything on his channel. I again thought that was odd, but didn't really push it. I just kind of told him that whenever he was wanting to do more work to let me know. What got strange for me was that, after that, he seemed to not even want to talk to me anymore. Then, there was something that happened that legitimately scared the hell out of me. There was one night that I was having a lot of trouble sleeping, and was feeling incredibly restless. I was pretty much just lying there and staring at the wall, when I rolled over and looked at my computer. At first, I didn't notice anything other than a dark screen in the window behind the monitor, and then after a couple of seconds of just staring, something about the scene was bothering me. Then it clicked. My screen was off, sure, but I had left the tower on. This is something I do every once in a while. But then, my eyes moved over and noticed that the red light on the web camera was blinking. This light only blinks when the camera is in use, and I hadn't used the camera at all that day. I sat up and started to shift out of my bed, and then I noticed that the light on the camera shut off. My groggy brain struggled with this situation, but I decided to get up and just unplug the camera. then try to go to sleep, which didn't quite work. Things got even worse the next day when I needed to get on my computer to do some classwork. It was early in the afternoon when I was back in my dorm, and I turned it on to do a report, when I noticed there was a document on my desktop titled, "Read Me Please." I hesitantly clicked on it and read what it said. "Hello, Michael. Please don't unplug the webcam tonight. I like watching you while you sleep. I'm not doing anything bad with the footage. I promise." It was literally 2 sentences, and it made me want to puke as I read it. I immediately disconnected my computer from the internet and called Charles, demanding he come over to help figure out what the hell was going on with this. He was hesitant at first. He told me that he was busy with something else, but I told him that my computer had been compromised and I needed his help immediately. When I said this, he changed his tune. When he got to my room, I found out why he changed his tune. He explained that when he was doing research for his dark web video, he had to go out onto the dark web. He said that while he was doing so, he came across a few sites that were sketchy, but he tried to avoid anything that was too questionable. That is, until he came across a website that required you to accept a prompt to access. He said that it looked reasonable. It just said that you accepted their terms and whatnot. But when he clicked it, the system locked up and it looked like someone else had connected to my computer. Apparently, he watched as someone else got into my system and basically did whatever they wanted. And he didn't tell me. He said that he was pretty sure that they had disconnected, and that they hadn't done anything to the computer because part of the agreement page said that they wouldn't use my information for malicious purposes. He said this as if I hadn't told him that this person was remotely accessing my computer to watch me sleep, and as if hackers on the dark web have a code of conduct. I may have gone off on him, telling him that it was the dumbest thing he could have done, and that he needed to fix the problem right then and there. I told him that he needed to get all of my files off of the system and then wipe it, or else I would make his life hell. A threat that I have literally no idea how I would have followed through on. Thankfully, Charles was a bit timid, and he agreed that he would help me. Obviously, this was a few years ago, and I'm no longer on the campus. I'm pretty sure that guy never got into my system again after that. Despite this, I have literally never slept with a computer in the same room since, and I have always made sure to turn off my system when I'm done using it every night. So that, my friends, was Marie's collection, this collection of dark web stories, scary dark web stories, over on Marie's Field of Nightmares. Whenever Marie recorded these, and I agreed to do 2 of them, I was fine with that, but I didn't realize that she also didn't record an outro. I think maybe she forgot? I don't know. It was later at night, maybe she just got tired and didn't think about it, which then left me to have to pick up where she left off and do this for her. So to that I say you're welcome. To you, and her, I suppose. Because without me doing this video would just end. Yeah. The dark web is a terrifying place. As somebody who worked in information security for over 6 years of their life and taught a class on it, I don't recommend getting into dark web stuff. I do recommend studying and understanding how onion routing works, what the dark web is, the difference between dark and deep web. Deep is just anything that's not indexed. Dark, now that's the dark stuff, obviously. So, understanding the technology is fine, but I just don't recommend going any further than that, right? Use the surface web for what it's for. Do stuff there. If you want anything illegal, just go to Craigslist, you know? That's all. Hopefully you all enjoyed this collection of stories. If you did, consider hitting the like button. If you're new around these parts, hi, I'm not Marie, but you should subscribe to her, and then you should go to the search bar, type As the Raven Dreams, look for a channel that has about 37-ish thousand subscribers, and go subscribe to that one. I'm her husband. That's the truth, actually. We do live together and are together and all that, so yeah. Subscribe to me as well. Please. I beg you. No, just overall, good time. I don't know, what was I talking about? Oh yeah. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment down below with your thoughts. Have you ever considered going on the dark web? Don't. And don't tell me about if you have. I don't want to be a party to your self-incriminating comments. I don't want to have to contact the FBI. Please don't make us do that. What is your favorite website, or what was your favorite website whenever you were a kid? If you're around my age and had internet whenever you were a lot younger. I don't remember most of mine. Yes, I do. PopCap Games was my favorite. I used to play Bookworm over there. That was a fun thing. There was another one that was what was it called? I don't remember what it was called. Pokemon Volcano or something. It was something stupid like that. But it was a really crappy like Pokemon MMORPG where nothing really moved. It was just like graphics that you just like clicked on and such. It was silly. And Neopets, of course. Neopets were great. So what's your favorite website? What a silly question I just asked you. Don't answer that, or do. It's fine. It doesn't really matter to me. This isn't my channel, so. Yeah, that's all I got to say. Hopefully you're all having a great day. Hopefully she sees you again here very soon. Until then, remember that you are loved, that you are valid, that you are important, that you're the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Until next time, my friends, much love, and take care. Nope, that didn't feel right. Much love, and sleep well.